Prithvi in many ways has given me a tremendous amount of exposure to so many varieties of art forms. So I'm much more a product of Prithvi than I am a product of the film industry.
I mean, the elephant in the room is that you are Shashi Kapoor's grandson.
Of course, I mean,
Ramesh Sippy's grandson.
Of course. Not at all, in fact. It felt like growing up was with like Ranbir, Kareena, Karishma. My dad really was obsessive and tenacious in making his film. And the funny thing is that I end up becoming an actor and I crave him in the Hindi film industry. Ranbir was like, I don't know how you've done this. I'm shocked. He was like, he said like, ये बहुत महीन काम किया आपने.
Zahan, thank you so much for talking to me. I'm so excited. And I have to say, you're one of the youngest guests that I've had. And I'm so ready to pick your brain and see how your generation thinks.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
And Zahan, you've been traveling to Delhi?
Yeah, I was, the 1st of March I was performing, so it's been a month now, right? We're on the 31st.
Yeah. For a play, right?
Yes, so Siachan is the play that I've currently a part of performing.
Yeah.
It's also a play that has marked a very significant turn for me as a young theatre maker, because before this, the first play I did was called Pitaji Please, which was also directed by Makarand Deshpande and was also written by him.
Yeah.
But Siachan is written by Aditya Rawal, who I met through Faraz. Both backgrounds in theatre, like a proximity and an affinity for theatre and performing arts, as well as a kind of rigor of sport discipline. So Aditya was a state level football player and I was a national level polo player. And I think both of us, our first love was to be sport centric, you know, professionals, but then we quickly learned that there's a bit of a ceiling there, and there's also a creative beast within us. Aditya studied to be a writer. I got into film making and film production, and then we both incidentally found ourselves becoming actors. And Siachan was a play that Aditya had written during his time in New York when he was studying writing. And we discovered it during the lockdown as we were waiting for production to start up on Faraz, because we had faced subsequent lockdowns and being stalled. And we would just meet up because we were close neighbors. We would just meet up and read plays and scripts and said, at least let's just keep the cogs turning.
Yeah.
So that's how we kind of spent some time together. And then he shared this script and it was an original play as against something that someone else has done. And I said, this is great. This is not only is it original, it's also a story that is from our world, in the sense that it's about Siachan, it's about the conflict, it's a fictional take on it, in the sense that it's a survival drama about 4 soldiers who get stranded on the highest outpost and how they unravel over the course of a few days, having been stranded for months now. It was really interesting, and so we decided to take this forward.
Yeah.
And I insisted that we do it in Hindi because he written it in English. I said, one is I want to do Hindi theatre. I want to connect with a Hindi audience. I think it's for 2 levels. One is that I want to kind of immerse myself in that way, and I think the reach and the way to connect to an audience deeply is something that I want to do in that language, and I think there's more scope in that language in the country. So we got on board another writer to help us adapt it into Hindi, and it started the process basically of us championing a story and presenting it in our vision as overall creatives.
Yeah.
So we could reach out to people in terms of how we wanted the set design, how we wanted. So I reached out to my sister, who's actually she works in production design, and she's worked on some incredible films, including like Gully Boy and Suitable Boy and Bombay Velvet and all sorts of things. So we reached out to the sound designer who worked on Faraz and asked him to help us create a sonic landscape for the play.
Wow.
We reached out to a young musician called Ajay Jayanthi, who we met through a mutual friend, who created original music for us. And incidentally, Ajay then got chosen and worked on, and he is the creator of all the original music of Black Warrant.
Wow.
So it's a weird how these
Yeah.
little overlaps and dovetailing happens, you know.
Yeah.
And Siachen happened just before Black Warrant. So, and then I also called Maxer, Makarand Deshpande, and I said, you have to help us because you have the experience and the wisdom to be able to guide us in this process. So he kind of directed and helped us put it together. But it was a lovely coming together of both sides, of this young energy of us trying to present our first work. And then we've taken it over now. So he helped guide us like an obstetrician, you know, and he was there to birth the baby. And then now it's our baby, and we've done about 32 shows so far, and it's been going on since June
Wow.
23. So it's almost 2 years now.
Now that you had this success for Black Warrant and you've gone back to your play, Siachen, are more people coming to watch it?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
you know you had success with Black Warrant.
Yeah, fully. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a huge difference
Yeah.
in people also wanting to come,
Yeah.
which is interesting. So
But I mean, it is to be expected because
it is, of course. So
you
one thing,
become a known face after that. Not that you were unknown before, but
no, I was quite unknown. I'll be honest.
honestly, yes.
I mean, totally. And Black Warrant has definitely changed that.
Yeah.
So there's a different kind of recognition that I'm receiving
And
currently.
actually, even in the West,
Yeah.
a lot of actors, Hollywood actors who are very successful right now, George Clooney is
Yeah.
doing a play in
Yes,
New York.
yeah.
I mean, they all return to theatre.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I was talking about this also, you
And
know,
it's an incredible integration.
I love
because
that.
they do well in film, and then they pull an audience to
Yeah.
the theatre as well.
it's the Americans who are doing this more now.
Yeah.
And I think they're also realizing that the joy of it, but the Brits always did.
Yeah, the Brits always loved theatre.
Because they come from that
it's an
tradition.
integral part of their lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so many of the legends being trained on stage and then migrating to film, and in a way that I kind of also wanted to model my foundation and
Yeah.
my training in that way.
Yeah.
It's also a bit of my
Yeah.
heritage.
But what's it like to grow up around a Prithvi theatre, of course, which is so iconic?
Prithvi in many ways has given me a tremendous amount of exposure to so many varieties of art forms. It's given me exposure to so much kind of, you know, tangential like literature also. It's given me the ability to have observed really incredible like makers and performers, you know. Like for example, for years on end I've been able to watch Zakir ji perform in concert at Prithvi, and not just at Prithvi but several other concerts through the city, you know, multiple times a year, and you know, very close family connect and overlap with Zakir ji. And only recently did I realize actually what a profound impact he had on me in that way, to observe his devotion to his art form, to observe how he shared his art with a live audience, how present he was, the ability to have somebody like a Maxer, other people, Nasir sir also, like for example, like the ability, one of the first things I ended up doing was when I wanted to become an actor was I went and watched for a month Nasir sir rehearse Arms and the Man, which was the play he was doing at the time, and just would sit like a fly on the wall and just go and watch what an actor does every day. So it taught me what the actor's craft and discipline was, as against the trappings of what a celebrity and a star.
That's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
It's so humbling, and it keeps you so connected to your craft, right?
Yeah.
Rather than being distracted by the sort of
And-
celebrity
Yeah,
trappings around it.
exactly. So I'm much more a product of Prithvi than I am a product of the film industry.
Yeah.
I think there
That's so
was
interesting.
Yeah, and there was, and I'm a beneficiary of the fact that that there is a film industry connect,
Yeah.
and it's kind of somewhat adjacent, but I didn't grow up in the atmosphere of the film industry because
Yeah.
everyone was, I mean, my grandfather was retired, my parents were not active members of that industry.
Yeah.
They were adjacent in that way.
I mean, the elephant in the room is that you are Shashi Kapoor's grandson.
Of
you're
course, I mean, no
Ramesh Sippy's grandson.
Of course.
when I say elephant in the room, I don't mean it in a bad way
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it's there. The aura
Yeah.
is there wherever you go. And my
Exactly.
God, you look like him.
Yeah.
And what a gorgeous man he
It's too
was
gorgeous.
inside.
It's
I mean,
too much.
And what lovely aura and what a
Yeah.
beautiful love story.
Yeah.
You know, which is so rare for a
Yeah.
person that comes with so much adulation and
Yeah.
popularity, especially with the women as well.
Yeah.
You know, he's a unique person to have
Yeah.
as a grandfather, and how fortunate.
Yeah.
You also have Sippy as a grandfather who made movies like Sholay,
Yeah, I mean,
Shakti.
come on.
And so, but I mean, did you even grow up around your cousins like Ranbir and Kareena and Karishma? Because it seems like you've definitely had an arm's length
Yes.
sort of distance from your lineage.
Fully. I didn't grow up around them. The closest family member that we had connection with growing up was Shami Dadaji, and also because we lived close by. So Shami Dadaji's grandkids and us had, I think, a fair amount of time together growing up. Not so much was the case with, not at all. In fact, it felt like growing up was with like Ranbir, Kareena, Karishma. Those relationships all developed into late adolescence. I mean, started developing when I was, you know, kind of into my late adolescence. The inheritance that I've had though has been so strong because it's the value systems that remained. It's not the idea of working as an active member in the film industry, but it was the fact that my grandparents created Prithvi, that my grandparents believed in a work ethic, you know, and kind of my dad and mom both also just being people who were passionate about what they did. You know, my dad really was obsessive and tenacious in making his films. They were ad films, but he loved the craft of it. So they're crafts people. And that value system has trickled down.
They get their hands dirty.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that has empowered me because it's made me realize that so there isn't entitlement, there is a sense of responsibility rather.
I see no
Yeah.
entitlement. You've walked in here like a normal. I've seen how people behave from the industry, and I don't blame them because the amount of adulation. I mean, it can really sort
it
of.
can get heady.
It can get heady. I mean, I don't blame anybody for behaving as they do. It's difficult to function, I think, normally in India when you're a star, but you have genuinely walked in with absolutely no level of entitlement.
Thank you.
I think it's incredible, and
I think my parents are the credit should go to them.
But tell me, like with Black Warrant, now of course you've done a film before, you've done theatre, all of that. But I think Black Warrant has really given you a lift, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you think that, firstly, that theatre and your background in theatre enabled you to be as immersive in the character as you were? I mean, what a set, what a collaboration, outstanding, right from book stage to when it came out, right? So, do you think your background in theatre helped you sort of excel in that way? And secondly, the success that you got out of it, do you think you're able to handle it in a more healthy way because maybe it was in your early 30s rather than your 20s that you received this kind of success?
Yeah, I think everything, yes, I think I agree with all your observations. Black Warrant is interesting on so many levels. One is, it's an effort, it's a cumulative effort of so many, like you said, right? So the level of immersion is that much more because of everyone's participation. The idea, like you said, like how incredible the sets are, how incredible the costume is. It's the simplicity of costume because there's not much scope there, but it immerses you in time and place. The rigor and dedication of everyone involved empowers you, and the script itself, the material, the expanse of it, and what it's informed by, the world, you know, and the history of it, and the fact that it's based on true incidents, the fact that it's a perspective of a real person, and how that then is extrapolated from and then created, and it's turned into a piece of kind of semi-fiction, but it's so intentional. So all of that creates the stuff beneath the iceberg. For me, it's the compounded result of a journey that started in 2012, and I signed Black Warrant in 2023. So it's 10 years of under, under the surface, the bigger part of the iceberg is training, it's deep work, it's a lot of frustration and limbo, going through lockdowns and stuff. I mean, my career, I started professionally acting in 2019 on stage, and that's the same time where I signed my film Faraz. But Faraz we only shot in 2021 because of we got interrupted, and every step there was a hurdle. And Faraz released in 23 technically. So it's 23 where my official on-screen career starts. Yeah. But it's backed up by 10 years of rigor and patience and frustration and existentialism and everything. It's also,
and you didn't have a typical Kapoor situation where you're launched by a big director, etc., like that, right? You're kind of course, you have visibility.
I have
access.
Yes.
But it's
more than visibility, probably access. Yeah, and then it's still a challenge to navigate it at least for me, it was the challenge was, how do I navigate this in the most authentic way? Yeah. I cannot suddenly change who I am and where I've come from, my worldview, my upbringing, my kind of ethical and value system or whatever. So, and my broad spectrum kind of approach to all of these things. So, the idea that even through the lockdown and stuff, I partnered with friends and we were writing a web series also. So I immersed myself into the writing process, into the fundamentals of screenwriting, into the fundamentals of writing, the fundamentals of performance. I do a lot of deep study work, broad spectrum stuff. The fact that I'm involved in production, the fact that I'm involved in theatre also, I've done backstage work, I've done lights, so there's so many things that are kind of fuel for me. So by the time Black Warrant comes around, it's me approaching this in a very different capacity. And yet it is the first time I've ever attempted something this big. Yeah. It's the first time I've ever pushed myself so far in terms of a character. Yeah. To do the research, to do the work, to kind of approach certain things physically, vocally, imaginatively. How do I fill the well with all of that? And then how do I let go and then trust and then be there? And then in a really short time frame of 51 days, you're doing 7 episodes. It's like doing 3.5 feature films. Yeah. How do you manage it? And yes, so coming to that place where, as frustrated and existential that I felt, I remember in 2020, I think I'm so grateful that it's happened this way, because like you said, maybe this gives me the strength and the capacity to be able to deal with it in a
grounded,
in a calmer, grounded way, where I'm also aware of not only how important it is to kind of continue this kind of work, but how lucky it is to be a part of something, how lucky I am to be a part of something like this.
Because of how long it's taken as well.
Yeah. And that's the thing, sometimes it gets to me, the only thing that gets to me sometimes, and I appreciate it, and yes, it's true, when somebody says oh, it's in your blood, oh, but of course. And it's this nature-nurture argument, and I feel like I've spent so much time nurturing. Yeah. And yes, that is a blessing, to be in an environment which has nurtured me in such a rich way, no question. But the idea that it's innate, I don't think so, because it's nurtured. Maybe it is there though, maybe it is. I mean, okay, fine, I look a certain way, and okay, fine, maybe you see me and you're like, oh, you have something. Yeah. Sure, but my God, there's so much work also that's gone into it. So, and at the same time, so even though that there's been access, it has been strangely hard.
And it's also a double-edged sword, right?
It's a double-edged sword.
I mean, you have this Kapoor-Sippy thing going on. That means something, but it doesn't mean that much, in your situation. Given you were doing this kind of on the back of your own talent and the back of your own sort of connections and whatnot, in a sense.
Yeah, and I think
right?
it was very clear from my parents also. And I think one is that they said, look, we're not going to pick up the phone for you.
Yeah.
And I don't think they were in a position also to be very honest, because like I said, like it's not like my parents are not active members of the industry, right? I have a generational gap there. My cousins like Ranbir, Karishma, Kareena are superstars, but all of their parents were also stars, and then of course their grandparents. So I have a degree of separation, so it's once removed. Second is the access was there, and there's a certain forgiveness, but there's also certain expectations. So like maybe I'm not going to get disregarded and bullied as easily, but I'm also going to be judged and see like, does this guy have what it takes? And I was so scared of that, that it kind of, so like it's my own imposter syndrome that obviously also has created a huge amount of motivation for me to kind of put in the work.
No, absolutely. And look, I mean, I'll honest, I also watched your interviews and I felt the same way that some of the interviews told you that, you know, we watched it, we didn't know who you were.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, wow. I mean, this is obviously an insane script, but great talent and great performance by this guy. Who is he? And then you realize later, oh, it's a Kapoor, and you're like, makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. It figures, which I get. It does figure, because there was a part of me that always felt that if I didn't make the most of my position, I'm not saying it's wholly unique and it's like whatever, it's perfect, but it's special because I know how rare it is to be in the position that I find myself in.
Absolutely.
So if I don't make the most of it, my fear of being mediocre or my fear of missing the boat, so to speak, has been the motivator. So it's like, I better make the most of it. Like, I shouldn't be taking this for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. So after you work with someone like Vikramaditya Motwani, you know, who's really top of the line in terms of sort of being true to his craft, authenticity, you know, great script every time, great direction every time.
Yeah.
I mean, the bar is set in so many ways, in terms of a director also, and in terms of your performance and the character also.
Yeah.
Where do you go from here? It's amazing.
I'm so worried.
You know, no, but listen, you've got romance, you've got comedy, you've got mainstream, you've got OTT, you've got theatre, and you're at a very interesting, you're operating at a very interesting time in the industry where, you know, villains are heroes and storylines are different and unknowns become knowns and stars aren't working so well anymore, and you know there's a real churn now, and OTT is obviously at its most interesting and creative best.
Yeah.
So it's a great time for you, right?
Yeah, I'm really optimistic, and I have a lot of faith that there are incredibly interesting people. So I'm very optimistic about the fact that we're in a space where there's a lot of talent.
And it's a decade of artists, it seems like.
It might be. I think we're on the cusp of it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge now is going to be for us, how do we organize ourselves and how do we distribute ourselves and our work, and how do we cultivate the audience, and how do we cultivate this communion? And I think that's going to be a big challenge, because I think the content will take care of itself. I think there's a lot of just intentionality, but the bridging of the gap in a time where there's so much noise, in a time where there's so much, it's this paradox of connection and disconnection, right? It's that you're more connected than you've ever been as as humanity's ever seen it, yet we feel inherently disconnected more also. So this thing of, and I think that's what art really serves. It serves as it's a connective tissue between people for us to better understand ourselves and each other. So it's an empathy engine. And I think it's up to us to try and figure out new ways of navigating. Otherwise we'll get lost in the noise. So that worries me. And the not working part of it is about us basically not being able to bridge. And maybe we're getting stuck in our own echo chambers. So that worries me a lot.
I need to figure out better how to connect with the audience as it is today.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think it has to become a process of where we're able to listen as much as we're able to express.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I think we get carried away with this idea of self-expression, but if it's...
And also formulas, right? That have
Yeah.
worked in the past. Those sort of formulas are not working now.
Yeah, formulas never really work. I mean, formulas work on a level, it's always this balance, I think. You need a certain degree of certainty,
Yeah.
and you need a degree of uncertainty,
Yeah.
because you need to be sure that you're getting something. At the same time, you want to be surprised, you want to be like mesmerized.
Yeah.
So formula helps safeguard interests and create safety essentially, and breaking the formula creates novelty.
Yeah, of course.
So both is needed, right? You don't want to go watch a movie and then suddenly realize that this is not the movie you paid for.
Yeah.
That's too much uncertainty.
Yeah.
But you want to go watch a movie that you know you paid for, but still you don't want to feel it feels so predictable and tiring that the point is to have an thrilling experience.
You need some surprises.
Yeah, so inevitable yet surprising.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned in through the writing process.
Even just social media platforms that are independent, like this incredible one called TT Official, which has just done a
Terrible Tiny Tales.
yeah, superb. Like also people are creating independently, right?
Yes.
So really you have to, it's hard to get it right, and it's a tough time, I think, but also exciting. But tell me now, how do you go from a pretty low-key sort of life, where people knew you but didn't know you, to this overnight thing where, okay, Black Warrant isn't sort of a Rohit Shetty film,
No.
where, you can't walk into a place without people sort of swarming around you. However, there's been a lot of recognition now that has come with that, and a lot of admiration.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that have changed for you? Now, when you walk into a place, are you getting a lot more calls from different...
Yes, there's a lot of recognition on every side of the spectrum. So one is, it's been interesting, like even in Delhi, I was having a coffee with a friend, and there was a group of older aunties, a kitty party on the other table, and suddenly I see heads turning and gossip like happening, and I'm like, okay, they've recognized who I am.
Yeah.
And they've all seen it, and then they come over and they're like, oh my God, and they gush and they share their love, their appreciation, their joy that they felt seeing the series and learning about who I was, etc., etc. And it's very heartening, because to be on the receiving end of so many people sharing their love with you is quite something. It's a very
Because
special
this is one
place.
of those situations where it's not been mixed reviews.
And how rare is that, right?
It's absolutely universally loved.
Yeah,
this series.
So it is, and walking around every once in a while, somebody recognizes me and then comes up to me and shares again their joy.
Yeah.
And to be able to receive that, and as a gift, that so many people are sharing their experience, their emotion with me, is lovely. I've been a conduit to it, yes, but it's not. I try and keep myself grounded in this way, because the focus is actually not me. It may seem like me when they share
Because
evaluation.
Honestly, you are the face of it, right?
Yes.
There's so much work and collaboration that's happened, and there are so many other insane characters in the show itself. There's no question about it.
Exactly.
But
no, like I said, like I am definitely the stimulus for it, and the work that I've done in concert with all of these people is a stimulus for it. On the
so now you have airport looks and all?
No, I
I'm just joking. I'm completely joking.
I'm trying to dress slightly more consciously, because I'm also being like, people they come up to you and they ask you for a photograph, so I don't want to look like a grubby, shabby mess, which is how I used to be a lot more. But at the same time, just keep it casual and stuff. But I'm enjoying it in that way. Like I'm enjoying the idea of also occupying that space, I guess. I'm also very, very lucky and very grateful to be on the receiving end. Like you said, is there's a lot more consideration from within the fraternity.
Yeah.
I think.
So you're getting a lot of calls now?
Yeah, I think, and for this time, again, it all comes in waves. So I know I also always like to, I hate getting my hopes up and my expectations up, because I think I fear disappointment and I fear the grief that comes with that loss. But it is nice to be considered. It is nice also to be considered in a way that I think I wouldn't have wanted it any other way, because I'm being considered in terms of the work I have done. There's a certain competence that is being appreciated.
Correct.
What more I can do remains to be seen. I think I have a lot more to offer, and I'm waiting to be challenged in a way that I can stretch myself and grow further. So I know that there's only that much yet that has been seen. Can I offer also reliability in terms of, let's say, economics, commercial reliability in a theatrical sense? I've not been tested in that way yet. And those are all very real factors for a lot of people, for a lot of producers. So it's going to be a very interesting journey. And like you said, the bar has been set in one degree. And I am very now conscious of that fact, because I know how much hard work has gone into a project like this. I know how much sincerity has gone into a project like this.
So what will you be doing next?
Depending on the story, like there was a director who I met recently, who I would love to work with, and I think is phenomenal. And yet the story that was being made and the character that I was presented with felt too close and too similar in world and in nature to what I've just done.
Yeah, and you don't
and
want
I
to go
found
down
and the timeline was too close, so I didn't feel confident that I would be able to find enough of a separation, which I could maybe, given the time, to kind of create a contrasting impression of a different kind of person, a different kind of human. And I was worried that it would just end up becoming repetitive and too familiar. Yeah. So through gritted teeth, I had to tell this director that I'm not confident about I can't say yes to this. And it breaks your heart.
Who do you think's really been your sort of movie hero?
I think, okay, there's two people. I think Zoya Akhtar as a filmmaker, I think has, despite a few slight kind of maybe fluctuations in terms of result in box office or success, I think genuinely has been someone who's gone from strength to strength, has kind of pushed herself world in approaching different worlds, and has tried to be a champion of big stories. And I've been fortunate to have worked with her as a young director's assistant in 2012. And I'm waiting for the day that I can work with her as an actor, and hopefully a story will align. As an actor, I think I deeply admire Amir sir and his legacy of films, and how he has championed all kinds of stories, how he has championed them in the biggest way possible. I think his dedication to the story and the craft and the collaborative process is incredible. So it's a huge source of inspiration.
Also, Amir has been this huge force, very tall force, without necessarily being physically very tall. And I think that's something you kind of maybe resonate with unconsciously, subconsciously. You know,
I think the idea of you can cast a very large shadow, irrespective.
And what would your favorite film of your cousins be? Ranbir, Karishma and Kareena?
I want to say Ranbir, Rockstar. I want to say Kareena, a tie between Jab We Met and Omkara, because I like the film Omkara a lot and I think she's brilliant in it. Jab We Met is, she's so effervescent in that film. And she's brilliant, but even her other, there's so many roles of Kareena's which I think she's amazing. Even like Chameli, Ranbir also. Barfi, his performance in Barfi is incredible. His performance in Tamasha is incredible. His performance in even recently in Animal. What he is able to bring, the presence, the sincerity, the intensity. It's all. They're all inspiring, and Karishma, her also rigor and her. I remember Dil To Pagal Hai, Zubeda.
Of course. Zubeda is actually one of my favorites of hers.
And so many. I think she worked at a time though. I feel like Kareena has the benefit of a more
modern cinema,
more critically acclaimed cinema.
Yeah.
I think Karishma worked at a time when
a sort of jhatak and matak.
Yeah, but it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And she worked with everyone.
And she really did well with it.
I mean, yeah, she's worked with all of them. I mean, she's worked. I mean, Shah Rukh, Salman, Amir, Govinda.
Yeah,
no
doubt.
Like, and completely like there, and so hardworking and so powerful.
And what about your grandfather, Shashi Kapoor?
Again, like such a spectrum to choose from. From his early work, like in parallel, you can see a Jab Jab Phool Khile and see The Householder. You can see a Diwar, a Kabhi Kabhi, a Silsila. You can see Junoon. You can see The Deceivers. You can see, foreign films, homegrown indie films and mainstream films. So there's such a spectrum, and then even towards the end, I mean, In Custody was incredible. So, and again, such a range, the ability to play and serve the need of the story, serve the need of the kind of cinema.
Absolutely, and look so damn
handsome. You can do
while he was at
Panch also, and then do Shakespeare Wala also, and have as much fun doing both.
Yeah. And really, as I said, looks so damn handsome while he's at it.
Too much. It's unfair.
It's unfair. It's actually unfair. To give everything to that one person. I'm sure the male actors at that time envied him. You had a very colorful upbringing, right?
Very, very.
Being in the kind of family you were, mother, outstanding photographer, your dad being in ad films, obviously they broke up as a couple, but I think they did
they stayed together as parents, and kind of made sure that we were raised, common values, and for the benefit of life and certain standard of life.
Yeah, you seem to come from a very sort of stable and secure upbringing in many ways, despite the fact that your parents were not together after a certain time. What is your generation's approach to relationships and marriage and all that kind of stuff?
I can only speak for myself. I am learning more now about relationships than I ever have before. in the nature of like romantic relationships and partnership of that kind.
But is it now a tricky thing because you've gained fame?
Yeah, a certain amount. I mean, not so much also.
Not so much also, but you've gained some fame. And for a lot of women out there, you are on that, you're at the crossroad, you could be,
It could be anything, yeah.
Would that be tricky to navigate?
Of course it's tricky, it's tricky. Because you're always trying, I think it's complicated because of how we live in society. Yeah. But I think on the flip side, it's actually quite simple because we're all humans. Yeah. We all fundamentally come down to that place of wanting to feel seen and understood, wanting to feel like we have a sense of identity, a sense of belonging. We want to feel confident in our ability to have autonomy and explore and grow. And those are deeply human things. The trouble I have is I get very frustrated with a lot of normative ideas, which is how things should be. Any normative science, which is that this ought to be this way and this ought to be that way. And that often is, it's like an appeal to antiquity, right? It's the idea that this has been done, so that is why we do. And I get very frustrated with that because I feel like you're not able to, maybe you'll choose to do it again, exactly that same way. But I would hope that you can arrive at it with a degree of presence. And I think that's where I lean into a more spiritual lens, a more mystical lens, is where a more Zen-like lens, which is that, can you find presence here? Can you become aware of it and then choose action based on that awareness? Correct. As against function on habit and conditioning. But conditioning and habit is so much more efficient, right? Because it it requires a lot less energy. So like Daniel Kahneman has this book, right, called Thinking Fast and Slow, and he talks about how fundamentally human beings have two kind of modes of thinking, and one is kind of very automated because it's built on
conditioning
and muscle
what's
memory.
been done before.
Yeah. And the other one takes a lot more energy and a lot more intentional.
Yeah.
And it's largely good that you operate instinctively, because it would be too energetically demanding if you had to always kind of do it. So it's so everything is fundamentally paradoxical. Everything requires both sides. So I get frustrated with the trappings, the hallmarky normative trappings that things ought to be perceived in one. Like there's only one way to measure success. There's only one way to measure the health of a relationship. There's only one way to measure the health of a community. And I think there's a bit of both. I think you need flexibility, and then you need to create foundational principles, but try and do it with a sense of presence and intentionality and awareness and discourse maybe. And it's hard, and we don't like hard things, right? It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah. And also the evolution of the modern relationship today is...
What I think, so on this is very interesting, and I'm a big consumer of this kind of discourse, so I enjoy it, and I think I want to try and find it also in an artistic way in terms of how I can express these ideas. Because I think fundamentally most stories are more powerful when they kind of have very compelling relationships. I think Black Warrant is the reason for Black Warrant being successful, notwithstanding of course its novelty in terms of its world. We've not seen a story about a jailer in this way. The excitement of crime and those sections of society of course are always attractive, but the success is because you bond with the characters, you invest in their relationships with one another, and that is what connects you. And because it's not a plot heavy show, it's a relationship heavy show. So I really value relationships of all kinds. I have deep friendships. For 25 years, my best friend who I've known.
So are they all in the industry? Or?
Mix. I have friends who I've known for 15, 18 years now who are lawyers, and one who I've known for 20 years who I knew through riding, and that's a common fact, and he's in finance and stock market and stuff like that. So different spectrums, but lots of arts and culture folks also. But coming back to that thing is that the modern world, and how my worldview, let's say, is that we have turned our significant other, we've created our dyad kind of construct of what a partner is, and we've placed everything on them, right? You have to be my best friend, my therapist, my reliable source, my excitement also, my novelty, you have to also be reliable, but you also have to surprise me and keep me excited and keep me all this. And you've burdened a single human being with almost every aspect of your life. And I find that very suffocating and very scary to think about. And I'm very much a believer in a community and a tribe construct. And I think human beings are in this idea, right? It takes a village to raise a kid. I think it takes a village and a tribe to stay healthy. So finding that, and yet the let's say the trappings and the scary side of tribalism, let's say, right, is where you other people also. So it's paradox.
Right, where the monogamy, and anyway, that's a totally different discussion, because physiologically human beings are not meant to be monogamous, etc. So that's a totally different discussion.
Again, physiological, and I think these are all informed choices. You can make that choice. We're not meant to be anything. You
said that you were dyslexic.
Yeah.
And you suffered in school.
Yeah.
Because of that, and didn't do your ICSE?
No, I did my ICSE. Yeah. I dropped. I had the option to opt out of my second language.
Right.
So I had Hindi, and I didn't do Hindi in ICSE. I dropped out of Hindi in the 8th standard. And the funny thing is that I end up becoming an actor, and I crave Hindi in the Hindi film industry. And so from the age of 18, 19, I go on a journey to kind of re-educate myself and kind of seek fluency and depth in this language.
Imagine your Hindi teacher now in school, seeing how beautifully you speak
proud,
Hindi.
hopefully.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, but dyslexia is so interesting. Again, I'm thankful that I was in a school that understood it. So I had special needs training and counseling and all sorts of things. It's basically just my brain, I guess, is wired slightly differently.
Yeah.
Always been somewhat of a visual thinker. Certain things take time to understand. And I guess navigating it, like I feel like it's a superpower also.
Yeah.
But it comes back to that idea of when you create a restrictive formula of how something ought to be, you end up alienating the other possibilities, and that rigidity often comes at a cost. So even in the educational system, it comes at a cost. But now more and more you're seeing the understanding and the kind of
differences in children.
Differences in children, right?
And
What
nurturing
Einstein
kids
said,
for
right?
being-
Is that if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it's going to live its whole life thinking it's useless.
And I think for the first time, educators may be understanding that
Yeah.
on some level.
Yeah.
You also were a national polo
So
rider.
I did national level equestrian first,
Yeah.
dressage and show jumping. When
Yeah.
I competed at the nationals and won, and then I moved on to polo quite quickly because I was more excited by polo
Yeah.
and being a team sport. I've always liked. That's an interesting thing, I think, and it speaks volumes for maybe the person I am. Is that I like collaboration. I like bouncing. I like doing this also. I don't like isolated, kind of ego-driven stuff. I like the idea of being in service of a collection, of a collective. So I think that the excitement of playing polo as a team sport as against show jumping and dressage, which is a very solo activity, I think was kind of one of the big reasons. And I played polo for many years, from the age of 14 to 21, I think, really, and pretty much professionally from the age of 16.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that actually adds so much to your life, right?
Huge, because it's on so many levels. One is, again, my dad's kind of morality and ethics on it was that he made sure that I earned everything and I understood the core value of things and didn't take any aspect of it for granted. So again, throw you into the deep end, get your hands dirty kind of approach. Even with horses, so I've lived and breathed and immersed myself fully into that world while I was doing it. I was living in a tent alongside the stables, while we were camping out in Delhi and during the polo season, to live and to be very responsible, to learn things. Like I know how to kit up the horse from head to toe, which means, like the equipment. I learned how to offer basic first aid also. I could, give a horse an injection and put drip and, do things like that. So do first aid to an animal. So I think, and it's a combination of one being taught and being guided, being encouraged, and maybe an innate kind of curiosity, like the joy of understanding something, has been let's say an underpinning. So whatever it is,
the commitment, the discipline that comes with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it
and
carries,
then to compete, and then
carries
to compete,
with you
right?
for life,
Yeah.
in terms of how you approach things.
Yeah, so sport teaches
And the
you that.
determination and the ability to withstand
Yeah.
obstacles and challenges.
Yeah.
Because my
You're
father
gonna
is a
lose, yeah,
sportsman, and
yeah.
at 83 I can see that.
Yeah.
The ability to withstand what life throws at you.
I think
and
sport teaches you
and
that.
sort of soldier on.
Yes, resilience. Sport teaches you resilience, unlike other things.
Yeah.
So sport, the discipline, the rigor, the cold, hard evaluation of winner and loser,
Yeah.
and the beautiful subjectivity of art, where it's purely your experiential truth. And I think again, a nice balance of both.
Lovely.
Yeah.
You think today's environment, it is beneficial when you are in your field to be someone's son and grandson? Or do you think it works against you? Because while it may work for a producer or director to take on somebody who comes from legacy,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to be working for the audience. They don't seem to be very happy with people who come with privilege and legacy. Is that fair? at this point right now?
Oh God, what is fair? It's a very
Nah,
big,
okay, fair now.
big question.
What I mean is that a fair evaluation
I
of what
think-
is happening right now
So
for the first time?
I think there are a lot of people who are, let's say, okay, let's put it this way. A producer or a director is trying to mitigate a certain risk by associating with someone who, let's say, has notoriety and is able to garner a certain amount of interest. So you're mitigating the risk of not being noticed. At the same time, the audience is aware of a certain complacency that could be perceived, a certain dissatisfaction that comes from somebody maybe not being able to deliver beyond the notional idea of we should take notice of someone because of who they are and where they come from. And at the same time, we're living in a time, so we admonish, so the nepotism debate, we admonish someone for their inherited identity. Yet we're living in a time where socio-political discourse is dominated by identity politics, whether it's whether it's communal identity or whether it's let's say sexual identity in the West, gender identity. This dominates your discourse, and you stand on that principle, on that edge, saying this is who I am, therefore you must respect me. And yet in the arts, we're having a debate about nepotism and saying who you are doesn't mean anything. In fact, I'm not going to respect you because of who you are.
Do you also think it's a very it's a time where the new generation of people want to almost tear down
Maybe that
privilege and bring it down.
let's
and sort
say maybe there
are
is.
tired of these kind of differences based on which family you're raised.
I don't think again that's new. I think if you look at, the Russian Revolution is
No, I mean in India, right?
In India
where there
also.
was such a servile sort of mentality for so many years.
There
now,
still is, there still isn't, there also
Yeah.
wasn't, like I said, like there's a mix of wanting to tear down. I think the audience though, I think as far as the arts are concerned, it's my opinion is that the audience shows up and wants to be, or let's say the audience is volunteering their time and energy because they want to be entertained, they want to be, they want to have an experience, they want some resonance of some emotional experience. I think there are people, and I have been bracketed now, which I'm very grateful for, but people who come from, let's say, a certain privilege and have not been cast aside brutally, and they've been appreciated. For example, somebody like an Alia or a Ranbir even, I think is because they deliver.
they deliver
And if you deliver,
they've got the goods.
They've got the goods, and I think
Yeah.
if you deliver, I think people, that's all you want. I think so. This is in a level of upset, which I understand. I can empathize with the idea when you see someone, and you're like, so much you've been given. It feels like you have not valued. The perception is that you have not valued your position enough to be able to deliver a certain amount of things. And maybe it's not your fault. Maybe it's also maybe as a whole.
But you're perceived in a more brutal way if you've not delivered, if you're from privilege,
Yes.
than if you're not from privilege. It's as simple
and
as
maybe,
that, right?
Maybe rightly so. Maybe it's on you. It's incumbent
Because you've
on
got
you.
the access because of the
Right.
privilege. So therefore, maybe the additional brickbats are also not completely unwarranted because you've walked in because of a certain, okay. But I
Maybe,
do feel
again.
bad for these kids who
I
are
do
coming
also.
on and being,
So my thing is that
sort of torn apart. I do feel bad
exactly
for them
because you're at the same time, and I said this recently.
they've also worked hard.
And even then, you're just starting. You're allowed to be bad when you start.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not given the chance to be bad,
Yeah.
if you're not given a chance
Because of who
to
you
be
are
a
and where
newcomer,
you come from. Yeah.
and that's so it's that I think is in a way there's so much pressure. In fact, that it scared the living daylights out of me.
Yeah.
To think that without any experience, without any earned self-confidence, self-assurance, I am going to have to put myself in a position where I am going to be judged. And it scared me. And that fear motivated me. Now, if you feel entitled about it, you think that, I got it. I just know what I'm doing. Well, then good luck to you. And maybe you do got it.
Yeah.
There are people who don't know, don't require the kind of diligence, let's say, and they just kind of instinctively gifted, like whatever it is, good for them. I'm jealous. I'm really jealous.
You don't have to be anymore after Black Warrant. But tell me, what's the nicest compliment you've ever received? Something that really sort of touched you or made you feel like, wow, I think I may have arrived.
I don't think I've arrived. I don't think I've arrived because I don't like the idea.
It's a cliche line.
And I don't like the idea of
I've
goals
realized I
and
cannot
destinations.
use any cliche lines.
You cannot with me. You cannot. I will combat all of them.
And dissect all of them. So
it's not about the destination, it's not about arriving somewhere, it's about being in process, it's about being in the flow of it. I am happy that I am increasing in my bandwidth and my capacity. I hope to continue to do so. I know how lucky it is to be in a position where there's so much resonance with a particular piece of work. I am aware of the fact that the next one may be the complete opposite.
Yes.
And you may have to.
But who has said something to you that felt like, oh my God?
Ranbir was like, I don't know how you've done this. I'm shocked. He was like, he said like, ये बहुत महीन काम किया आपने.
Maheen, wow.
Maheen being the idea. So he was like, he was impressed. And I guess he's seen me in Faraz and then he's seen me in Black Warrant.
Yeah.
In between that, of course, I've done 2 plays. Pitaji Please I did before Faraz also. And then I also did an Amazon web series which hasn't released yet.
Oh, lovely.
Which will hopefully release soon.
Super.
I'm really hoping.
Yeah.
But so I am also coming to the table with a cumulative experience of 5 projects. And another short film which also will release. So Black Warrant, the impression that it's created comes with baggage, experiential baggage, which I'm grateful for.
Of course.
Because if I
You're
didn't have
also ready to take on the next big thing.
Yeah.
Because you have been working at it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Zahan. This has been a pleasure for me.
Thank you.
Enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Devna. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you.